No matter where in the world you are, if you look up to the sky on the right cloudless night, you'll see the same bright moon. With this shared connection to Earth's satellite, you would think the moon wouldn't be seen as some property you can buy or sell. But it turns out, it might not be so cut and dry. So with that in mind, who owns the moon? At first glance, the question seems sort of silly. The moon isn't something that can belong to someone. It feels like asking who owns the ocean or who owns the air. But then you come across the fact that national airspace and waters are very much a thing, and that ignoring claims to them can get you in some pretty hot water. Pun very much intended. Although we all have free access to the air we breathe without having to fill out a form or ask permission, try flying a drone over an airport, and you'll learn very quickly that the air isn't exactly as free to use in every way. But the moon has to be different, right? I mean, who would want to own that thing? It's just a dead, lifeless rock hanging 237,000 miles away in the middle of a limitless abyss. No air, no water, and worst of all, probably no Wi-Fi. You're better off trying to buy the tip of Everest so you can at least charge climbers to take the selfies they just climbed 65,000 feet to take. Well, considering the fact that the United States and China are both currently planning to go back to the moon and set up lunar bases, and that the moon will likely be a strategic rest stop for the upcoming trips to Mars that famous meme lord Elon Musk keeps promising are coming, it might be a wise investment to try and own the moon. Think about it. You would basically be able to charge for the most expensive parking spots in the world, and you wouldn't exactly need meter maids to make sure nobody's sneaking away without paying. Alright, so owning the limited even ground where lunar bases or rest stops could even be built sounds like a solid business plan. Let's say you're entering the lunar real estate market and are trying to lay claim to the moon. Would anyone try and stop you? Well, other than having a hard time finding a real estate agent certified to sell in that area, there are a few roadblocks that have historically tried to make owning the moon very difficult. In 1967, right in the dead center of the space race, it became clear that shooting for the moon wasn't just an expression anymore, with the looming reality that one of the two superpowers at the time, the United States and the USSR, was going to make history by sending humans to the moon. The United Nations decided that it was about time some regulations were placed on its ownership. To be fair, they definitely had a good precedent for doing it, as humans have claimed every single rock we've ever come across, even if they're just 3 foot wide. So, following that prescient insight, the Outer Space Treaty was created by the United Nations, stating that the moon is mankind's common heritage, and that no nation can claim sovereignty nor ownership of Earth's lunar satellite. Alright, so it seems like your dreams of a nice townhouse overlooking the Sea of Tranquility have been stopped before they even started, right? Not exactly. Our more observant viewers may have noticed the specific wording of the treaty: no nation. Well, you're not a nation. At least, I imagine you're not. So you found a loophole. Sure, no country can own the moon, but there's no law nor treaty preventing a private individual from pronouncing the moon as theirs. Alright, so all you have to do is say that the moon is yours, and it's done. Easy as moon pie, right? Not so fast. It turns out you aren't the first individual to take notice of this loophole, and that someone has taken issue with your claim. Meet Dennis Hope, once just an unemployed man barely able to make ends meet. Sometime back in the 1980s while looking up in the sky, Hope remembered learning about the Outer Space Treaty and its less than concise wording. He then went home, got out a pen and paper, and wrote and mailed a letter, kind of like a physical text message for our younger viewers, to the United Nations, informing them that he was declaring ownership over the moon, and invited the organization to provide him with a legal rebuttal to his claim. Hope never heard back, which as far as he's concerned was as good as confirmation of his claim. While he was at it, he also decided to claim ownership over Mercury, Venus, Jupiter's moon, the then planet Pluto, and even Mars. Sounds like Elon Musk might be getting a parking ticket for Mr. Hope pretty soon. While no Earth government has recognized Hope's claim, none have combated it either. I say no Earth government because Hope decided that the rest of the solar system should have a new government presiding over it, and thus formed the Galactic Government, a solar system spanning democratic republic that represents interplanetary landowners. You heard that right, landowners, plural. You see, Hope didn't just keep his celestial claims to himself. He immediately subdivided and started selling plots on the moon and the other planets. Oops, sorry Pluto. Celestial bodies, to surprisingly successful results. You can buy a piece of interplanetary property over at his website, lunaремbassy.com, which definitely looks like a website from the 1980s. For the incredibly low price of just $19.95 an acre, you can own a certificate stating that a piece of the moon belongs to you. Of course, you have to add the galactic government's lunar tax to that, so the final price comes out to $36.50. A bit steep, but a small price compared to the millions you can charge NASA or the European Space Agency for parking their lunar landers on your property. Now, if you've ever gotten one of those certificates saying you own a star as a birthday present, you're probably familiar with how this sort of thing works. The difference is, humans aren't likely going to visit the distant star you named after a cartoon character anytime soon, but we will be visiting the moon and Mars within the next few years. So in a very short time, the validity of Hope's claims, and yours if you decide to make this wise investment, will be put to the test. This brings us to the idea of what ownership means. Anyone can say they own something, as Hope is very much proven. But what does that actually mean? Well, think of it like this. If you own your home in Canada, and someone comes along and tries to say the house is theirs, and to come in and start living in your house, the police will use force to get them out. So the police's power to protect your claim to ownership is what guarantees you really own your house. Getting back to Hope, there aren't any space police in the galactic government defending the property rights of lunar landowners just yet. So if, say, a country as powerful as China landed there and didn't recognize his claim to ownership, Hope wouldn't have the power or force needed to enforce his claim. Some of his other landowners, on the other hand, very well may. That's because Hope has sold land to some very powerful individuals, including 3 former US presidents: George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, and Jimmy Carter. While sadly, only Jimmy Carter is still with us, the fact that US presidents actually purchased lunar land from Hope really adds some validity to his claims, and may actually mean that that certificate you got from him for $36 could be officially recognized as a deed to an actual piece of the moon one day. If Hope's vision is made into a reality, then he could very well actually become the richest man in the solar system. That's because the moon isn't just a big chunk of land he could sell. It's also packed with an estimated $6 quadrillion. That's a 6 followed by 15 zeros worth of helium-3, which NASA, SpaceX, and the Chinese National Space Administration are all seeing as a potential fuel source that can be made loaded into ships on the moon so they can have enough fuel to get to places like Mars and beyond. If Dennis Hope and his landowners' claims are officially recognized, they could be sitting on more money than currently exists in the entire world economy, which is a mind-boggling $90.4 trillion. All in all, while who owns the moon sounds like a silly question at first, it turns out that the answer is a very complex and serious one. But what do you think? Do you want to own land on the moon? Do you think Dennis Hope's claim to ownership should be officially recognized? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.